Always good to unmute first. All right, guys. Welcome to our office hours. Once again, it's me, Patrick Haggerty, here to talk a little bit about test taking strategy, registering for the exam, a couple other things like that. If you look at the document I shared with you guys in the event, you might recall I had a Google Doc version and I also had a Word doc version. I've added a couple of things in here, mostly a little section here on registering for the exam. And that's one of the first things I want to talk about today is a little bit of information about registering and, you know, if you're going for the exam, how do you get that set up, options on taking it, etc. All right. At this point, obviously, we took our class together. In the email you should have received with your invite to this office hours, they had your voucher, and I'll talk about the voucher here in a second. So you should be ready to use that voucher to schedule your exam. If you didn't get a voucher, or if you have any sort of questions about, you know, vouchers or timing or anything else, in my links file, I've got the email address launchpad for veterans at ROI training with underscores in there. That's kind of your go-to address if you have questions or challenges. Okay. Now, if you'll recall, one of the things that we did in our main class together was we went over here to the GAIL certification website. They talked a little bit about what the core topics for the exam are. We also discussed a little bit about the length of the exam, and I talked just a tad about test taking strategy as it relates to the length of the exam. Specifically, you've got 90 minutes, right? We've got a 90-minute exam here, and you have 50 to 60 multiple choice questions. Okay, now on the exam, kind of in the upper corner, you'll have a timer that's running, okay? That's kind of keeping track of your 90 minutes. Down on the bottom, you've got kind of some normal buttons that you would expect, like back and next. And one of the buttons says mark for review. Okay, now, if you have a 90-minute exam and you have 50, 60 questions, then ideally your target should be to spend about a minute a question, right? That's what you're going to be doing. One of the problems I have that I have to be conscious of is I tend to not want to let a question go, you know, so my brain tends to say, come on, just a little bit longer and we'll figure this out. Come on, just a little bit longer and we'll figure this out. And, you know, there might be times in life that kind of thought process is useful. On an exam, that kind of thought process is not useful, right? You never want to leave a question blank, but sometimes you just aren't really sure of that question. When you aren't really sure of that question, that's what that mark review is. The timer in the upper left-hand corner, I don't want you to watch it because that just adds the weight of time to your shoulders and it just stresses you out, right? So what I would do with you, if I were you, is every 5 questions or so, just take a peek at the timer. If you're on question 15, glance at the timer. Are you about 15 minutes in? Are you under 15 minutes? Then you're doing well. If you're over 15 minutes, maybe you think to yourself, maybe I need to pick up this pace a little bit, right? So checking the clock every about 5 minutes is beneficial. And again, like I said, you're shooting to not get hung up on a question. You know, you're in the question, as long as you're actively problem solving, great. But the moment you start thinking, yeah, there's nothing else I see, I don't know what the answer is, mark for review, come back to it later. At the very, 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 very end of the exam, you know, when you get to the absolute end, they show you this weird page and it will, you know, it'll have like all the exam question numbers. And next to some of the questions, there'll be like a little asterisk or something. Those are the ones that you mark for review. And all of them will be links. So if you kept your timing of about a minute a question, you know, then when you're done, you should have 30 to 40 minutes of free time left, okay? The 30 to 40 minutes of free time, that's when you say, okay, I wasn't sure of this question. Let me go back and look at it. So you've marked all the questions, and for every question, if you were pretty sure of the answer, you didn't mark for review. If you really didn't know the answer, then you mark for review, right? So you've got a handful of marked reviews. Now you can spend that last 30, 40 minutes playing second guess yourself. Sometimes I go back to the question and I don't know what it is, but when I read the whole question again, I just get it. Sometimes I come back to a question and I discover that one of the facts they talked about in some other question helps me answer the question I didn't know about. Sometimes I come back to the question and I'm like, yeah, no, still don't have a clue. Regardless, if you're playing the odds and you're eliminating the ones that you're not sure of, if you're lucky, sometimes you're down to, I'm not sure, but I got a 50-50 choice, and may the odds be in your favor, right? So that's the way I would manage time. Just check every 5 minutes, every 5 questions or so. How you doing? Okay. Do you need to pick up the pace a little bit? Are you doing okay? Never leave anything blank. Google doesn't tell us how many questions it takes to pass. Google does tell us that sometimes they put test questions on there that aren't scored, but they don't tell us what it takes to pass. So it's not beneficial to you to keep some running total. Oh, I've left 3 of them marked for review. That benefits you in no kind of way. So do the best you can. Anything you're not sure of, mark for review. Get through the whole exam. You're done with the whole exam, 50, 60 minutes at most. You now have 30, 40 minutes left. You can go back and reevaluate some of those questions that you weren't sure of. Now, in my links file, I added a little section on registering for the exam. The first thing you need to do is you need to go over to CertMetrics and you need to create an account at CertMetrics. Okay. So when you go over to CertMetrics, you'll end up with a page that looks kind of like that. And, I don't think I have a username. I have an email address. So I just log in with my email address. But you see right down there, if you don't have an account yet, you can register a new account right down there. When you're registering a new account, they take you through normal kind of first name, last name, country, address, that kind of information that you go through. Now, one of the other things that you'll see once you get in, invalid login. That would be upsetting. Invalid login. Yes, sorry. Yeah. Okay. I changed my email address recently. That was like my personal email address. That's another thing. If you are changing jobs or something, you can change your email address that's associated with this account. That's part of your profile. Okay. Now, one of the things in your profile is a professional affiliation section. The professional affiliation section, you can go in and you can basically identify, the company I work for, what kind of relationship do they have with Google? And, what's your business name? What is your email address name? If you got some .mil.gov or vet email address, something like that, use that when you set it up, and it will it'll show Google that, you're a member of kind of the veterans group, but also it'll show your organization. Sometimes Google gives organizations perks if they have more than a certain number of people that are certified in Google Cloud. They may get some sort of benefit from that. So it also can help the organization. If you change jobs, like I said, you can go in and you can update, my information. That's where your email address is. You can update my information, and you can change all that at any point in time if you need to. Now, when you get into the home page, you'll see on the home page where we've got this, I guess I can do it here. You can see on the home page where we have this schedule an exam and launch an exam. If you decide you want to take the exam virtually, this is where you come to launch your exam. Okay. If you're scheduling the exam, which is, I assume, what we're doing right now, you can go to that view schedule. And what it does is it jumps you over here to where it says Web Assessor. It kind of jumps you to this Web Assessor page, and it gives you this link to Web Assessor. So CertMetrics is the organization that keeps all the certifications and manages them. Web Assessor is the organization that actually administers the tests, right? So you notice in here, I've got Web Assessor. There's also a couple links here: online system requirements, system check. I've got those links in my links file as well. Where online testing machine requirements, and then this is kind of the system check. That's if you're taking virtual exams. We'll come back and talk about that here in a second. Anyway, you follow that link out to Web Assessor. It leaves the CertMetrics site. It takes you over to Web Assessor, and like I said, Web Assessor and Criterion are the people that actually administer the exam. Okay, so the GAIL currently is available in English or Japanese. So pick English or Japanese, you expand that out, and what you'll see is it'll show you essentially all of the exams. It'll show you all the certification exams that Google has. So yeah, I'm an English test taker, and it'll show me all the different certs that Google has, and you can pick whichever one that you're going for. Obviously, we're going for the Generative AI Leader certification. When you expand the Generative AI Leader certification, you get these 2 buy nows. Okay, now, for whatever reason, this terminology always messes me up. On-site proctored. On-site proctored means you're taking it in person at a testing center. So the on-site proctored, that's the option that you want, or I guess this is the option that you want if you plan on taking it in a testing center. And the other one down here, the remote proctored, use this if you want to take it from your laptop. You'll know for sure, these always confuse me. You'll know for sure if you click the wrong one because only one of them is going to ask where you live. Okay, the other one doesn't care where you live because it's virtual, right? Okay, in the 21st century, why would I ever go to a testing center? Well, it's kind of up to you. So if you're taking it virtually from your laptop, okay, obviously you're taking it virtually from your laptop. You don't have to go anywhere, right? Probably one of the best benefits for me is the flexible hours. You can pretty much schedule a certification 24/7, 7 days a week. You want to take it after hours, you want to take it at 2 a.m., you want to take it on the weekend. In the virtual exam, you can take it anytime you want, right? Which is honestly the biggest benefit to me. The biggest downsides to me, one time I scheduled a virtual exam and I could not get the facial recognition proof who I am to work. Me and tech support spent about 40 minutes trying to get the system to accept my ID. Because what you have to do is you have to hold up your driver's license to the camera, and then you have to go through this computer check to make sure you are really that person, and it would not accept me. It just wouldn't. I ended up having to cancel my virtual exam and take it in person. Okay, but that's obviously an exception. That usually doesn't happen. Other downsides of taking it online, you really need a fairly sterile environment. They're going to have you take your camera and point it around the room. I've got 3 laptops within reach of me. I've got 3 monitors in front of me. I've got a phone on my desk. I've got a watch on my arm. They would be, and my room's kind of a little messy. They would not be happy with me. Okay. You really want a fairly empty room. You really want, if there's any electronics in there at all, like a TV mounted on the wall, just throw a towel or something over it, because they're going to see that and ask you about it, But if you can rent a conference room at work that's empty, or if you have a guest room at your house that's more or less empty, that works really well. Also, they're watching you on the camera pretty closely using a combination of people and AI. And if you do something like, no, honey, daddy's taking an exam right now, I can't talk to you. We're sorry, we just invalidated your test. If you're lucky, they'll take you to a human who reviews what happened, and they may let you move on. If you're unlucky, or if they're having a bad day, they will invalidate your entire exam. So sorry, your exam's now gone. I hope you're ready to pay $100 to take it again. So you really want to make sure the family knows, look, unless there's blood or fire involved, do not bother me. I have to take this exam. Another thing not to do if you're taking the exam is if you're one of these people and you can be overwhelming during inspection, need extra 20 minutes. If you mouth the exam to yourself or something, no, that's something else that they don't like. So don't speak under your breath. Don't look off screen for long periods of time, because they are monitoring very close. Honestly, the nicest thing about the testing center, as far as I'm concerned, is it's just this like sterile environment. You go there, it's like cubicle city. If you're taking it in person, you go through this where you tell them where you are and they'll identify testing centers. I'm kind of small town Mississippi, and there's 2 testing centers near me. One of the biggest downsides of taking it in person is exams are usually available like 9 to 2 Monday through Friday. There's nothing on the weekend because I'm small town, right? There's nothing on the weekend. There's nothing after hours. You might literally have to take off work to go take the exam. If you're in a big city, one time I took a cert in London. If you're in a big city, they had like weekend hours because it's a big city, right? But if you're really looking for unusual times to take the exam, the online version is probably nicer. Other things, don't bring anything in with you. They will make you empty your pockets into like a locker or something, right? Leave your purse in the car, leave your wallet in the car. The only thing you have to have is you have to have 2 forms of ID. And when they say 2 forms of ID, one should be a picture ID, and one should really be a credit card. I showed up at that London data center and I had a driver's license and a passport, and they said these 2 forms of ID are unacceptable. Like, it's a driver's license and a passport. What better forms of ID can you have? Do you have a credit card? I'm like, sure. But, so I lucked out. I happened to have the credit card with me, and so I got in, But yeah, they want a picture ID like your driver's license or passport, and then they want like a credit card. That's what they want. So make sure you have your 2 forms of ID. One other thing I would take with you is the test code. When you sign up for an exam, they're going to email you this test code that's like a UUID length, big random number thing. And I would bring the test code. Normally what I do is I print the test code out on something and I leave everything in the car. I leave my phone in the car. I leave my wallet in the car. I leave everything in the car. The only thing I bring in with me to the testing center is the 2 forms of ID and the test code, right? Because I don't really, like one time I brought my phone. I wasn't thinking I brought my phone. They took my phone from me and they like put it on the front desk or something. I wasn't really wild about that. So just leave the stuff in the car. But again, the thing I like about testing centers is it kind of puts my brain in the right mode. I'm at the testing center. It's quiet. It's like cubicle city. They give you a computer, they log into your test, and you start. The only thing you can bring with you in virtual or in-person exams is you can bring your reading glasses. You can't bring note paper. You can't bring water. You can't bring any of that. Okay. Now, at some point during this registration process, you're going to have that voucher burning a hole in your pocket. And you're like, wait a minute, I got this voucher. It's saying I got to spend $90 or something. Where does the voucher go? Where's the voucher go? The voucher doesn't go until the very, very last page. So when you like make it all the way through and you're like headed over to pay for things and you're still seeing some cost up here, it's not until the very, very, very last page where they're asking for the credit card that you put in your voucher and then you hit this apply button. And when you hit the apply button, you'll see the cost going down to 0, and that's what you want. So that voucher that you have, you don't insert it until like the very, very end. Okay. Now, one of the things I mentioned briefly in the certification prep class is I said, Google does have some sample questions. Yeah, as a matter of fact, I'm going to go over some of Google's sample questions today. Okay. The sample questions are always kind of the same, or at least they maybe update them every few months. But the sample questions are not like every time you go, there's a different set of sample questions, right? The only reason I'm going to show you sample questions today is because I want you to see what real test questions look and feel like, right? Because nice thing about the sample questions is they're written by the people who do the exam, right? So that's a benefit. Remember that there's one of the other links I gave you is the link to the exam guide. One of the other links I gave you is a link to the exam guide. Remember, the exam guide is a PDF overview of what's on this exam, right? What exactly is on this exam. And you'll see, as I mentioned before, it's filled with product names. It's filled with, technical terminology, consistency, relevance, availability, cost, text generation, context window, security, availability, supervised, unsupervised. It's all technical terms and concepts and product names. Our course materials actually do a pretty good job of introducing all those to you. I would definitely go back through the course materials. When you register for the exam, you know, I would register for the exam 2 weeks to a month from now. If you take and pass the exam by December 19th, you get some extra swag from Google, right? So that's pretty good though. I also like that because December 19th, that's just under a month out. I think that's kind of ideal. 2 weeks to a month is a good amount of time to give yourself, because I think in those slide decks for my course I ran with you, there's over 800 slides in there. It took me 2 solid days of talking really fast. I would like to say there were a number of comments that I got was things like, we enjoyed the class, but the word fire hose, the word fire hose showed up in comments more than once. Yeah, so if you imagine, it took me 2 days of really fast talking to get through those slides. If you're just kind of studying an hour here or there, it could take quite a while to go through the slides. But I would definitely run through the slides, and on every slide, technical terms, product names, and until that stuff makes sense to you. So schedule the exam 2 weeks away, no more than maybe 4 weeks away. And if you're like me, that's much better than someday. Someday I'll register for the exam, but you never do. Technically, your exam voucher is good for a year. So you could register as late as next November, but what are you going to remember from our course if you register, next summer or something? The answer is going to be nothing. So I think it's beneficial to you to register now. As soon as I finish today, come on, as soon as I finish this office hours, just go over and register for the exam, figure out a time that works for you, decide if you're going to take it virtually or in person, go ahead and get that registration done. And then you have a deadline, right? You're studying for the deadline. My typical habit is I give myself about 4 weeks, and then I'm working on the deadline. And it's like the first week I didn't study enough. The second week I start feeling a little bit more pressure. I'm studying more. The third week I'm like really feeling it, and I start studying a lot. And the last week I'm like studying every moment I can. And then I pass the certification. So that works for me. If it works for you, go for it. All right. Now, another link they give you here that I also have in my links file is I have kind of a study guide out here. And the study guide is another PDF that kind of reviews a lot of the same stuff. Technical names, product names, quick summaries of stuff. So this is another nice quick study guide. It does not hit as many of the technical terms and product names as we saw in the actual course, however. So just keep that in mind. How about using Notebook LM? Yeah. Notebook LM you can find over here at this notebooklm.google.com. And Notebook LM is a Google technology that's basically a study notebook. That's sort of the idea. So do you see this? You see this notebook I have right here, Generative AI Leader Certification? What I did is I went to Notebook LM, and when you fire up Notebook LM, it'll ask you to upload what you want to study or what you want to know about. And you can give it links to things. You can also upload documents. So you see what I did is I uploaded the exam guide from the Google website, and I uploaded our entire course. So this is our entire course of information. And so now if you have a question about something, tell me about the different ML learning types or something. Tell me about the different ML learning types. And what it'll do is it doesn't have access to Google search. It just has access to this documentation. So it can go into your documentation and it can come out, and here we go. It's telling me about supervised learning. It's telling me about unsupervised learning. And you see, it's telling me, well, it knows all these things because there's slides in the presentation where we talked about that. So you kind of have a assistant here, and this research notebook can help you do research. You can build audio chatbots. You can build flashcards. You can build quizzes. There's all kinds of cool stuff you can do with Notebook LM. So you might take a look at that as well. Okay. Now, some general tips. Read the whole question and read every single answer, right? Don't ever stop when you're like two answers down and you're like, oh, this is the answer. I'm going to go with this. Sometimes you will see more than one right answer. So you got to figure out of the answers they give you, which one is the best answer. If there's more than one right answer, correct answer, then something must be better about one of those answers than another. And a lot of times, the something that's better about one answer It'll go back to what's actually being asked. It'll also go back to any constraints they give you. Sometimes they'll give you a question and they'll say, oh, and by the way, the people who need to do this, they're not developers. Or the people who need to do this need to do it as fast as possible. The people who want to do this do not want to customize anything. The people who do this are developers and they're going to do some custom coding with this. They'll give you some fact that might draw you towards one answer or another answer. Also, remember, play the odds. You don't have to always go with the right answer. Let me rephrase that. When you read the question, in your brain may pop up what you think is the ideal answer. And then you read the answers, and the answers are none of the answers are your ideal answer, right? Okay, well, that's fine. What you have to go with is you have to go with the best answer they give, right? You might think to yourself, well, this is stupid. The real best answer would be this. Why is that not there? Well, doesn't matter. You go with the best answer. And also remember, you're eliminating answers that you know are wrong. If you're not really sure what the right answer is, can you still eliminate some of the answers? If I've got 4 choices and I eliminate 2 answers, then it's a 50-50 choice and things are going well. Also, remember the mark for review. If there's something you're not sure of, you're pushing for that about once a minute, 1 question per minute, then anything that you're not really pretty sure of, mark it for review so you can go back and visit it. Now, they have some questions in here which are similar to the questions we saw in the course. I'm not going to go through their questions. You can do that on your own. What I want to do is I want to go through some of the sample questions from the, I want to go through some of the sample questions that are actual test questions, right? So again, if you look at my links file, I did an office hours yesterday where I covered the same material. So you'll see already in the my links file is a link to my annotated office hours lecture notes from yesterday. So if you want to go back and look through the questions that Google put in that slide deck, I certainly would. They're good questions asking you good things. But I'm going to go through some questions, and I lifted all these questions right off of the sample questions from Google. The thing I like about the sample questions from Google is they're written by the people who actually write test questions. So they're written more like real test questions. I think I commented on this in the course several times, that these kinds of questions in this course, they're just not really written the way that test questions are on the test. These guys are actually from the test authors. So what I'm going to do the rest of our time together is I'm just going to go through some test questions, and I'm going to show you the approach I would use to answer these questions and try to show you some tips to kind of how it works. Okay. A marketing team is brainstorming creative ideas for a new social media campaign. Okay, so they call that ideation, right? Where you go to generative AI and you're using it to try to get kind of your creative juices going. You're trying to get ideas on something because they want to do something new, right? They want to do something new, and it's a social media campaign. They want to quickly generate various taglines and initial post drafts to explore different angles and messaging options. So they want to find something new. They want to try, does this sound good? Does that sound good? What do you think of this one? Okay, let's go back to Gemini and try some other things. They need a Google Cloud pre-built generative AI tool. Okay. So if they need a pre-built generative AI tool without additional setup that allows for rapid creation and experimentation, what should the team do? So it's got to be pre-built and they're not doing any extra setup. Open the tool, go. That's what that says. Not writing code. We're not setting a bunch of stuff up first. We're just opening the tool and going, right? Okay. Use Notebook LM to upload past successful campaigns and analyze their key elements. Okay. We just talked about Notebook LM, right? Notebook LM is good at researching existing content, right? So if you were told that we're trying to find the reason that some past marketing campaigns were successful and some weren't, that might be a valid approach, but that's not what we're doing, right? We're working on coming up with, exploring new things and new social media and brainstorming creative ideas. Notebook LM isn't really about that, right? Notebook LM is, if my boss comes to me and says, these 10 new policy documents just came out, I need you to thoroughly understand them and prep a presentation on Monday to go over them. and I really had to buckle down and study these 10 policy documents really well. That's a notebook LM. It's my study notebook while I do that kind of thing. But if I'm trying to ideate and come up with new stuff, usually notebook LM is not the way I'm going to go. Okay. If you're not convinced, then leave it as an option, right? Use Google Workspace with Gemini within Google Slides to prepare a presentation outlining their social media campaign strategy. No, we are not told that we are outlining a social media category. We're not told we're doing presentations. Remember, Google Workspace with Gemini, this is Google Docs, the word processor. This is Google Slides, the spreadsheet. This is Google Slides, the presentation material technology. This is Google Sheets, the spreadsheet. So that's not where I go to ideate, right? If I want to write a summary, if I want to write a job post, that would be good options. But not coming up with new ideas, that's not really my preferred tool. Use the Gemini app to create taglines and social media post drafts that align with their campaign goals and target audience. Probably the right answer, right? Remember, the Gemini app is the Gemini webpage. So they're saying, just go to the Gemini webpage and try some stuff out. That's something that it could do. Create a custom gem in Gemini Advanced with specific brand guides and target audience profiles. Okay, that's actually very attractive to me, except they said, so again, to me, I think that one's out, and I think A is out, and I think B is out directly. But when I'm reading this, I'm like, well, gosh, creating a gem that knows about our brand guides and our audience profiles, that sounds pretty good. It might give me better results, as a matter of fact. But this is a good example of where there's kind of two right answers, but one is more right than the other. And the thing that trips me towards C instead of D is they said without additional setup. In order to do this, create a custom gem. That contradicts my without additional setup thing, right? So even though that might give better actual results, they specifically said no additional setup. So that's what pushes that answer out and makes this the right answer, right? You see that's a pretty small point. And if you're ever looking at this and you're like, there's two answers, either one of these would work. Either one of these would work. 9 times out of 10, you're correct. Either one would work. But there's something in the question that Google puts there to pull you towards one of those two answers and disqualify the other answer, right? Okay. A research scientist wants to use VO to visualize live fluctuating data streams on a real-time dashboard. Yeah, create some chart or so. Okay. Why would VO be a poor choice for this particular task? Okay. What is VO? Well, VO is a tool that I can go to and I can tell it, I want a picture of a horse running through the, waves at the edge of the beach or something, and it will create for me a video. Okay, that's what it does. What it doesn't really do is there's no facility in it for like real-time visualization. Some real-time dashboard, I imagine like a bar chart or a pie chart or a spider chart or something like that as I watch, it's like redoing itself. Okay, I got some live data stream and it's reading it. That's not a VO thing, right? That's not a VO thing. Remember, VO, you don't just throw data at VO and it draws you a pie chart or something. In VO, you have to textually describe what you want. And it's more about my horse example than it is about some sort of visualization. It's not really about drawing graphs and whatnot. Okay, VO generates videos from static inputs like text or images and cannot process or dynamically visualize live data. I think we have a winner, right? That's kind of what I said. So I will say, a lot of times if I see a question, I do kind of speculatively come up with what I think the answer would be. If you're asking me why this would be a poor choice, it's just not designed for that live visualization. Can you imagine the data is changing and what are you going to do? You somehow have to come up with a text description of it, and then you would generate the video, and then it's just there's nothing really live about VO like that. VO is let's make the video and let's piece together a bunch of videos, and now I can show you this cool video I created. But yeah, VO may lack specific scientific visualization styles needed for accurate data representation. Well, yeah. Again, I don't know that it has any scientific visualization styles built in at all. But again, that's not quite as good as the first one, because the first one is very descriptive. Look, you give it static text or an image, and then text too. You can give VO an image and say, I want this particular horse. Here's a picture of the horse I want you to use in that video you're going to create of the horse running along the beach. But it's typically images and text or text alone. And yeah, it probably doesn't have scientific visualization styles, but you see, they're talking about they make it sound like I'm asking for a spider chart, and it doesn't know how to do a spider chart. VO isn't about visualization at all. That might be something like if you're using Looker Studio and you want to build a dashboard, does Looker Studio support this particular chart type? That's a whole different product and a whole different question. So I think that's out. VO use for this scenario would require too many computational resources. No. VO is VO. You don't go into VO and you say, well, VO, this is a really complex video. You need more compute. Right? VO is just VO. You go into VO and you tell it what you want to do, and it doesn't. It's not like you can dial up the computational resources or something. So that doesn't really make sense. VO is designed for short form video. True. Not continuous long duration live data displays. That's true. Right? So to me, that's a perfectly valid answer as well. So I think the middle two are out. VO is designed for short-form video, not continuous long-duration live data displays, is a true statement. VO generates videos from static inputs like text or images and cannot process or dynamically visualize live data. That's a true statement, and I think it's a little better because it's a little bit more specific, right? The problem isn't just that it's really designed for short video. The problem really is that it's not designed for like a stream of data, and it's going to turn that into a video, right? But even if you couldn't go there, this might be the one of those where you're just like, I don't know. I don't know which one it is. Okay, 50-50 chance. Well, it is a 50-50 chance because we've gotten rid of the middle two. You may mark it for review, but at least you can get down to that 50-50 choice before you have to decide, which one do you think is the better of the two answers. A company sells custom designed phone cases on their website. How should Imagine be effectively used? Okay, so Imagine, what product is that? That's Google's image creator. Okay, if you're designing custom designed phone cases, I could imagine some people might want a phone case where they say, here's a picture of my son. Could you put a picture of my child on the phone case? But also, maybe what they're going to do is you come in and you describe to me the phone case design you want. That might be kind of a fun project, right? You come in and you just describe to me what you want the phone case to be, and Imagine can, dynamically create that design for you. So that might be what it is. Okay. So how should Imagine be effectively used? To generate realistic images of phone cases on devices from text descriptions of designs. Isn't that what I just said? I'm thinking that's going to probably be the answer. To analyze customer feedback to identify popular phone case design trends. It's nothing about analyzing customer feedback. That's not an Imagine thing. To predict demand for different phone case designs based on sales data. Look at sales data, predict sales. Nah, that's like a forecasting problem. That's a common AI kind of problem, but it's not something that Imagine would solve. To transcribe customer audio feedback, we can just stop right there, right? It's not transcribing audio feedback on prototypes. No, it's not about transcription. Google has speech to text that could help you with that, but it's not about transcription. So the only one that says, hey, I'm going to generate images is the first one. And you see, that's all you really have to know here is you have to know that Imagine is the image generator. And all these other things, they're not about image generation. So Imagine is the clear winner, or the first one's the clear answer. A company lacks extensive in-house machine learning and AI expertise. Okay, so they're telling me they may have developers. They may have other skills, but they don't have hardcore AI expert people. You remember we talked about in that one section of the course, we talked about kind of the general purpose developers. And, they can build an application that maybe uses AI. They can build an agent that uses AI. They can use Gemini, but they're not like building their custom model from scratch. If I want to go back to the last one and I want to train a model that identifies, trends based on sales data, they may not know how to do that because that's something that maybe requires some hardcore AI skills. Okay, a company lacks extensive in-house machine learning and AI expertise. How does Google democratize AI? Okay, this is one of these hot terms these days, right? Democratizing AI. So Democratizing AI to me means what do they do to make AI available to all the people who need it? So over here, I got these managers, and maybe they need to do some AI. Do I give them Gemini? I had Gemini and Workspace. And over here, I've got some web designers and they want to put a chat bot on the homepage. So maybe do I give them like a low code, no code tool that can generate the chat bot, and then maybe over here, I've got my, harder core developers who are going to do stuff from scratch. Yeah, but they say here, we don't have the machine learning AI people. So Google has various products to meet you where you want to be to do your AI kind of thing. Okay. By offering exclusive access to its most powerful AI models for high spending clients. No. Remember, one nice thing about Google Cloud is it doesn't matter whether you're high spending or low spending. Every feature in Google Cloud is available to everybody using Google Cloud, right? Some features are more expensive than others, but it's not like, oh, you're a big spender. Hey, we got these cool features just for big spenders. No, right? By providing fully automated AI solutions requiring no technical user input. Okay, possible, but probably not right. Because yes, they do have fully automated AI solutions. That's true, but that's just like part of it. When they ask me how does Google democratize AI, I'm thinking something that says we have all these different kinds of offerings. Whichever one works best for you, you can use. Yeah, that's it. This is one particular offering. Yes. They did say, and this is why this is kind of attractive, they did say a company lacks extensive in-house machine learning AI expertise. But that doesn't say they have no developer skills whatsoever. It may not be extensive machine learning, but it may be basic machine learning, So like I said, I'm looking for something that's more running the gamut. But I'm holding this back because that might be an okay answer. By providing a comprehensive AI platform with low-code, no-code tools, pre-trained models, and easy-to-use APIs, this is the winner, right? This is what I'm looking for. When they say this democratizing AI, and I imagine a company that's running from, managers all the way through developers, even if they're not AI experts, I'm looking for something that's kind of appeals to all these different groups, okay? Low-code, no-code, pre-trained, easy to use APIs. This is, I think, appealing. And by the way, when they say low code, no code, when they say fully automated AI solutions, that might be like the no code choice right there. So do you see how it's kind of like one of the choices? So to me, B is wrong because it's kind of a sub answer based on C, right? It's the like no code wizard approach, but Google has other approaches as well. By offering free custom AI solution development and deployment for all businesses. That sounds like Google's going to come in and write the code for you. Yeah, that's a big no. Not for free, at least. Okay, so I think of the choices, this is a slightly better choice, than that one up there. You see what I mean when I was saying that those questions in our actual course weren't really quite written like test questions? You can see the test questions, they're being trickier in the test questions in a number of common ways. Okay. The Human Resources Department deploys a generative AI, Gen AI model to screen job applications to provide a short list of candidates to recruiters. I think Google actually has an AI to help you scan resumes. Anyway, recruiters notice that some seemingly qualified candidates are consistently being overlooked, but the AI provides no explanation for its ranking or exclusions. Okay, recruiters notice that some qualified candidates are consistently being overlooked. You know what that is? That's problem one. That's problem one. And then they say, but the AI provides no explanations for its ranking or exclusions. Do you see what that's actually a different problem? This is a very common Google trick. So they've told me there's two problems. Problem one is we've noticed that qualified applicants are being disqualified. Problem two is there's a lack of transparency, right? There's no explanations. That's a transparency problem. Okay. The company needs to address this lack of transparency. What should they do? So you always, before you leave the question, make sure you know what it's actually asking you, right? And this is a really common trick that Google does, where they will tell you about facts that are kind of unnecessary, right? They could have just said, there's a Gen AI system, it lacks transparency. How do they fix that? Okay, and you could have said that all in one quick sentence with a colon at the end of it, and it would have been a lot simpler. But they didn't say that, right? They gave us a lot of words up there, and they talked about this problem. And the reason this is a distractor is because in the back of your mind, your brain starts thinking about that. If it's disqualifying qualified candidates, is there a type of bias? What is it? Why is it doing that? That's a problem. I know that's a problem. We all know that's a problem, right? Yeah, we all do know that's a problem, but that's not what they're asking. The company needs to address this lack of transparency. So in other words, the company is asking about the transparency problem, the problem too. Collect a larger and more diverse data set for the model. Do you see the trap? That is like, oh yeah, you know what? That might help with problem one. Do you see that's a solution to problem one? But they're not asking about that. But do you see the trick, right? Your brain read this question, and your brain sees that there is a problem picking good candidates. That might mean they need a bigger, more diverse data set so it can get better at doing the actual predictions. And so your brain grabs onto that because it's, oh yeah, that sounds like a solution. Especially if you quit reading there, then you've fallen into their trap. Fine tune the generative AI model. So take the model and give it some extra training specifically to do better job selections, right? That might fix problem one. So do you see that's another solution to problem one? Implement explainable Gen AI policies. Okay, that's like extraordinarily vague. But you know what? Implementing explainable AI, explainability is the way you address lack of transparency. You have a way of explaining the answers. I'm sorry, you're not right for this job, and these are the things that are wrong with your resume, or this is why. Okay, so that actually is talking about problem two. It's a lousy answer because it's so vague. Implement explainable generative AI policies. What's that? How do we do that? I don't care. It doesn't matter. What matters is that's actually a solution to problem two, right? So that one's out. Let's look at the last one. Develop fairness assessments for the generative AI problem. Do you see, once again, fairness assessments? It's unfairly biased against some job applicants. That's another problem one solution, right? So even though answer C kind of stinks in that it's extraordinarily vague, it's actually the right answer, right? Because all three of the others, they're all address problem one. And like I said, this is a very classic question trick that you'll see. They've told you about multiple problems, but they're only asking about one of them. And when you look at the answers, some of them are addressing the other problems, not the one they asked about. A company is evaluating the use of large language models to enhance its operations and customer interactions. What is a primary characteristics of a large language model? Okay, now this is kind of another common thing you see. Do you see they could have just asked that? That could have been the entire question. What is a primary characteristic of large language models? Okay. Do you see a company is evaluating the use of LLMs to enhance its operations and customers? Do you see that's really just blah, 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 blah. And sometimes it makes your brain go to work on unimportant stuff. How would I use a large language model to enhance operations? What does that mean? How would I use a large language model to enhance customer interactions? Ooh, we could build chatbots. We can, and it's like your brain goes to work on all that. That's not what they're asking, right? All of that is extraneous information. Having information that has no bearing on the answer is a very common thing, right? Because they distract you. There's lots and lots and lots of words. In this case, there's lots of words that said we had two problems, and then they only asked us about one. They could have skipped the whole why this is a problem. And they could have just said, we have this AI system that provides no explanations. How would you fix that, right? But again, they distract you with all this extra stuff. Here's another method. They're distracting you with how would you use LLMs for operations? Doesn't matter. The question is, what's a primary characteristic of a large language model? Okay, large language models, you can ask them a question, they can give you an answer. They are one of the foundation of the model types. They're trained over broad data sets. They are, they have a lot of capabilities to do all kinds of different things. They're a foundation model like we talked about. LLMs excel in highly specific technical tasks requiring deep, singular domain expertise. No. That's like a traditional model. If I train a traditional model that does credit card fraud detection, it's kind of a one-trick pony. It can tell you if that credit card transaction looks fraudulent or not. But that's not a foundational model characteristic. Foundational models are broadly focused. They're lots of data. They can do all kinds of stuff, and then we adapt them to what we want. LLMs learn and generalize effectively from small data sets for niche applications. No, okay? We said large data sets. And we also said it's usually not for niche applications, it's for these kind of broad applications. LLMs have strong inherent logical reasoning and problem-solving abilities without extra prompting. Some of them do. This is kind of like, if you go into, if I go into Gemini, if I'm looking at Gemini, do I want the model that answers quickly, or do I want the model that thinks through complex topics? Okay, so some of them are actually pretty good at logical reasoning and problem solving, but not all of them. Okay, so I'm holding that one back because it's the best answer I've seen so far, but I'm thinking it's flawed, and I'm hoping the last one's the right answer. LLMs are trained on vast data sets, check, enabling broad language and context understanding, check, and adaptability, check. Okay, yeah, that's what I'm looking for. That whole foundation model thing. Big data sets, broad, and language models are, yes, all about language, context understanding, read, understand, generate, Adaptability, yeah, much better answer than C. All right. An AI robot learns optimal package delivery routes in a city. Okay, delivery robot, check. It receives positive scores for fast, successful deliveries and negative scores for delays or failures. Okay, something right there should be jumping into your brain, right? Because we talked about learning styles, and one of the learning styles was carrot stick like that, right? Where it got, it learns by, you do this, that's good, robot. You do that, that's bad, robot. It learns from the kind of carrot stick approach. Through this feedback, the robot improves its navigation over time. What type of machine learning is being used to train this robot? Supervised learning. Supervised learning is like my credit card fraud detection, where you have a bunch of historical data, and in the historical data, you know what the answer is, and you're trying to learn the patterns to predict that answer. That's not what we're doing here. Deep learning. Okay, deep learning is a type of supervised learning that's basically about creating deep neural networks. But that's not necessarily anything to do with what they're describing here. Unsupervised learning. Unsupervised learning is like where you're looking for clustering or other patterns in data. I gave you like the skin cancer DNA example when we talked about that. But again, unsupervised learning, you don't know what the answer is, and no, it's not carrot stick. Carrot stick is reinforcement learning, right? You are positively and negatively reinforcing. Another classic question, besides something like this would be something like, you're trying to build something that could play a game, right? And so it gets points for certain things and it loses points for certain things. Which learning style would be good to use to try to build a model that plays this game really well? Well, reinforcement learning, right? Because it will learn multiple things that get points, and it will, learn multiple things that takes points away, kind of thing. Imagine, it receives positive scores for fast, successful deliveries, negative scores for delays, failures. So you're trying to teach it to navigate. You're trying to teach it to be as quick as possible, so you're trying to maximize sometimes more than one thing at a time. That's what reinforcement learning tends to be good at. A company wants to use generative AI, Gen AI, to automate complex workflows and improve decision-making across its various departments. Okay, there are certain types of automation generative AI can definitely help with, that's for sure. They're considering implementing AI agents as a key component of their strategy. Agents, okay. What is the primary function of an AI agent in a generative system? Okay. Do you see, we basically have another question just like this one. Blah, 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 blah. What is the primary characteristics of LLMs? Blah, 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 blah. What is the primary function of an AI agent in a generative system? Okay. This doesn't obviously always happen, but it is not unusual where this happens. Now, the reason this is the reason this is troublesome sometimes is sometimes in the question, they will mention something that you will have no earthly idea about. They're talking about robots. What do I know about robots? I saw a question one time, they talked about protein folding. The heck is protein folding? A company wants to build a new generative system to help with protein folding for new drugs. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what is protein folding? It's very easy to distract you if they tell you about something or they mention something that you don't know what that is. Because part of your brain is convinced that you're supposed to know what that is, right? Go to the question. Do you think knowing what that is helps with the question at all? In this case, the question is pretty darn straightforward. What is the primary function of an AI agent in a generative system? Okay, an agent. An agent is a type of application you build with generative AI, and it's designed to handle one major task. I got that agent over here. You can talk to it, and you can order McDonald's food from it. Okay, I just did a bunch of training for McDonald's. Okay, maybe what they're going to do is maybe those kiosks in the McDonald's restaurants, maybe they'll make it so they can talk to you, right? You could absolutely do that. That would be an agent. The agent talks to you, and it knows how to do one thing, and that is help you order at the McDonald's restaurant. Okay, have an agent that's a chat bot that helps with tech support, right? So it's an AI system that is designed to handle some kind of major task. Okay. To provide the computing power, no, it's not about compute power. To provide the computing power for training and running advanced AI models, no. Do you remember that part of our class where we had like the domes on the slides, and like the bottom dome was infrastructure? Okay, and one of these little regions here was agent. Yeah. So that compute power, that's infrastructure. Be the user interface. Nope. The user interface was, I think, what was our top level, like AI application or something? That's the user interface. Okay, to be a smart system that can analyze, use tools, and make decisions to reach goals. Like taking orders at McDonald's or answering tech support questions. Yeah, I think that's going to be the answer right there, right? We said an agent basically has a model, that's the brains. It has some instructions, how do you do this job? And it has tools that allows it to interact, right, with the outside world, basically. How do I actually place your order into the ordering system at McDonald's? That would be a tool. So that's probably it. To be a central storage place, no, it's not about data storage or the data in an AI model. It's not about storage at all. Okay, so storage might be in the platform or down in the infrastructure or something. To be a smart system, autonomous smart system that can talk to you, that can analyze, use tools, and make decisions. Yeah, that's an agent. Okay. An advertising agency needs to quickly generate many photorealistic images from text for client campaigns. Needs to generate many photorealistic images from text for client campaigns because traditional photo shoots are slow and costly. Okay. They want to rapidly create high quality visuals from text and reduce expenses. Which foundation model should they use? Okay. Gemini. No, Gemini doesn't generate images really. Gemini is more about, you can feed it images and text and everything else, and it can help you in general ways, right? Gemma is like mini-me Gemini, right? Remember, Gemma is based on Gemini, but it's like the version of Gemini you could download out of the cloud and like run on your tablet or something. That's Gemma. But both of those guys are large language models, right? They're about handling text primarily. VO, okay. We talked about VO. VO is our video generator. And remember, if you had forgotten that, do you notice that we've already had a question where they talked about VO for video generation, right? So you remember I said sometimes you won't know the answer to a question, you'll mark it for review, and you'll see something on a later question that kind of jogs your memory. Yeah, that definitely happens. But anyway, so that's video. No, our image generation is Imagine. All right. All right. A company is planning to integrate generative AI into its operations, but is wary of becoming dependent on a single technology provider. Okay. 80% of organizations in Google Cloud are using other clouds as well. 90% of organizations in Google Cloud are using on-prem data centers as well. So there's a strong likelihood that you work for an organization that has at least 2 clouds, maybe 3, and you may have on-prem data centers as well. So the idea of trying to avoid vendor lock-in is definitely something that organizations are looking at. And this is something that Google wants to position themselves to appeal to those people, right? Google does a lot of work to try to say that come to Google Cloud and you're not going to get locked in. Why? Well, because we use so much open and open source technology that it can help you out, right? So that's what they're saying. They prioritize the ability to choose and integrate different AI tools and platforms as their needs evolve. Sometimes you might be using ChatGPT. Sometimes you might be using Claude. Sometimes you might be using Google Gemini. Which inherent characteristic of Google Cloud would address this concern? Well, that open source one. Google Cloud's emphasis on an open approach to within its AI offerings is probably it. Google's commitment to tightly integrated proprietary solutions. Yeah, that sounds open, doesn't it? No. Tightly integrated proprietary solutions would not help you if you're wary of becoming dependent, right? If you say you're wary of becoming dependent on a single technology provider, that says you're wary of being locked in, of tight integration, of proprietary solutions. So that one's out. Google Cloud strategy prioritizing fully managed AI services that simplify the user's experience. How does Google prioritizing fully managed AI services, if that's even true, but how does that? So I would say it doesn't. Sorry, all the power just went off and on at my house, so I'm glad I'm still here. Google Cloud's primary focus on automating AI workflows. Nah, this isn't about automating AI workflows. And again, automating AI workflows has nothing to do with helping you avoid vendor lock-in. Part of Google's shtick is definitely to say, look at Google Cloud. We use lots of open and open source technologies. Gemini, absolutely not open, but Gemma is, right? So a lot of times Google may have offerings that are proprietary, totally Google Cloud, but they also may have companion offerings that are totally open, right? So Google kind of a consulting research team needs to analyze multiple lengthy reports and documents to find key trends and make client recommendations. Okay. Analyze multiple lengthy reports. I'm thinking Gemini can help with that, right? Generative AI can help with that. They require a method to quickly understand each document's core findings, link information across different sources, and efficiently organize insights for their report. Okay, so our job is to study and super duper really understand this group of documents right here. That sounds like earlier when I was talking about I have said I really want to understand them in depth and what I would do. Yeah. Manual methods are too slow and complex. Which Google Cloud offering should they use? Notebook Ellen. The Gemini app, would it work? Probably. In the Gemini app, I could probably upload those documents and say, Gemini, here's some documents. I'm going to have some questions for you, right? But that's kind of a secondary use of the Gemini web app. The Gemini web app, remember, is connected to Imagine, and the Gemini web app is connected to Google Search, and the Gemini web app is connected to all these different things. So it's really good at pulling in external information to combine it with the documents I share. Notebook LM, though, remember, it doesn't connect to Google Search. It's not researching outside the documents. It's totally about things like using multiple lengthy reports and documents to find trends and make client recommendations. That's much more what Notebook LM is. Vertex AI Search. Vertex AI Search is a search technology. If you told me you wanted to build a search engine for these documents and put it on your website, Vertex AI Search could help with that. It could help you build an AI-driven search engine that you could put on your website. You go search, and it searches a bunch of past documents or something, searches a bunch of PDFs or whatever. But that's not going to help us analyze stuff. It helps you find things. It's out. Workspace. Now, Workspace with Gemini, this would be about word processing. You don't upload documents into Workspace necessarily and say, now help me analyze these. So the only two that really kind of sort of make sense are these two. And the one that's specifically designed for what they're describing is this one. So once again, we have an example where there's more than one possible answer. Yeah, the Gemini app could do it, but it's not really the main focus of the Gemini app. The thing that's primarily focused for, here's a bunch of documents, could you help me with them? That's the Notebook LM, right? And that's just like when I pulled it up and showed you how it could help me really understand the slides in the GAIL course, for example. All right. A grocery store chain has data in several internal systems like sales, inventory, and marketing. Okay, so they're a grocery store. That says they may not be the most technologically advanced company, right? They have internal systems, sales. Employees waste time searching these systems for information on product performance, stock campaigns, and stock and campaign effectiveness. Okay, so they got all these systems, there's data in these systems, but they're not getting the data quickly and easily like they want. So we must be headed towards some sort of generative system that could better connect all these data sources and then help the people understand them. The audience, it sounds like, is going to be employees, not like the general public. I'm not building a search engine and put it on the website. This is for employees. They need a central way to easily access and understand data across these systems for better decisions and efficiency. Which Google Cloud offering should they use? Okay. Workspace. No. Google Workspace is about helping you better with word processing and something. But Google Workspace is not about, we need to connect to the data and better understand it. Gemini Enterprise, that's going to be the answer. Gemini Enterprise, we'll come back to that. Vertex AI Search. Again, remember, if the problem was finding the data, okay, and they did say employees waste time searching these systems for information. They need a central way to easily access and understand data. Vertex AI Search would help them find the documents, but Vertex AI Search has nothing in it to help them understand the documents. I need something that's got more Gemini. I need something that can give me the data, but also has like a Gemini brain in it that I can talk to. That's out. Conversational agents. Again, conversational agents basically means it's chatbot. Yeah, a chatbot is what I need, but I need a chatbot that can be connected to all these systems, right? And to connect a conversational agent would require a lot of extra work, right? So the out-of-the-box Google product that does this is Gemini Enterprise. Gemini Enterprise used to be called Agent Space. I mentioned that, and I've mentioned that during our course because I have been to Google exams where it took them months to change the product names on things. So there is a possibility you would see this question on the actual exam, only instead of Gemini Enterprise, they would call it Agent Space. So I would say in your to study list, you should understand that we need to you should understand that Gemini, both of the same product. Gemini Enterprise, I think I mentioned, it's Gemini just like this, but the difference between regular old Gemini here and Gemini Enterprise is it's like this, but you can pre-connect it to data sources in your organization. You have this person who's the Gemini Enterprise administrator, and they can say, let's build a connection to our sales force or sales product over here. Let's build a connection to our database where all the inventory information is. Let's build a connection to all the marketing. And so when you go in, it's kind of like you'll see in Gemini Enterprise, you see some extra stuff. You see some extra things show up, like right over here, where you can say, hey, by the way, I want to search our sales. When I'm talking to you today, I want you to use the sales information when you're answering questions, right? So it's Gemini, but it's augmented by corporate data, because you have pre-connected it to all these internal data systems. That's exactly what it does. And then it just looks like that, so it is very much a chatbot that you can interact with. All right. A tech company has separate teams using different tools for their machine learning projects. A tech company has separate teams using different tools for their machine learning projects, causing duplicated work and scaling issues. Okay, a tech company has separate teams using different tools, okay, for their machine learning projects. All right. So we got different machine learning projects, everybody's using different tools. Okay. Causing duplicate work, okay. The left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing. So we got people that are doing the same thing different ways with different tool sets. Okay. They need a central platform to manage all their AI development, deployment, and monitoring. Okay, so what they're kind of saying is, let's start by trying to standardize our tool set, right? Let's start by trying to standardize our tool set. That's what it sounds like to me. They're asking me, how can they standardize this tool set? Okay, well, if they want to standardize the tool set, what is the tool set in Google Cloud that is specifically designed to handle AI offerings? Cloud Functions, no. Cloud Functions is a tool that is designed to handle events. Something happens, an event fires, it does something. Hey, a new document just showed up. Wake up, translate the document to Spanish, and it's a Cloud Function. Vertex AI, we have a winner. That is that center point of the AI world in Google land. And that's where all your tools related to AI development are. Gemini Enterprise. Okay, well, Gemini Enterprise, we just talked about. And Gemini Enterprise is not about AI development or deployment. It's a wizard that builds a kind of knowledge-aware chatbot that knows about, it's Gemini, but it knows all about your corporate data, right? So that would not help me with development. BigQuery is a data warehouse SQL query tool. Would not help me with AI development. Okay. All right. Got about 15 minutes to go. I'm going to do a few more of these comments and we will call it a day. Time for the weekend, right? A software company's AI chatbot struggles to answer customer questions about recently released features because this information is not in its original training data. Yeah, when you train an AI model, at some point you have to turn off the new data because you have to go over the data over and over and over again. So at some point, they call it a knowledge cutoff, right? And the knowledge cutoff says, we're not going to update any data past this point. And now the model can train for the next month on this data. So one problem with teaching models things through training is it's very difficult to update that, right? Customers are getting inaccurate answers, increasing support agent workload. The company wants the chatbot to use the latest to give accurate, up-to-date responses without retraining the entire model. Okay, so how do I give a model access to data that is the latest information without retraining a new model? Well, the general way you do that is you use some sort of tool, right? Tools give models access to external information, So I'm thinking if there's something that says a tool for external data, if there's something that mentions the word grounding, if there's something that says retrieval augmented generation, which is a type of grounding, which is a type of tool, I need a database where I can look this up. You asked me a question about the latest Ford vehicles. I need some tool I can go, hey, tell me about, hey, are the 2026s out for Ford yet? 2026 model line, because I need a tool that can get access to the latest information. That's some sort of grounding tool. Fine-tuning. Fine-tuning is a type of training, right? Fine-tuning is a type of training, so that would not work. The problem with any type of training, including fine-tuning, is there's a knowledge cutoff and it's not up to date. Prompt engineering. Prompt engineering is the instructions you give it. I want you to talk like a pirate. I want you to sound very professional. I want you to be joking. I want you to tell dad jokes every time you give an answer. That's prompt engineering. You're telling the model how to act, how to respond, its personality, general guides, but you don't teach it data that way. There's RAG. Yeah, okay. So that's going to be our answer. Retrieval augmented generation. Retrieves the latest facts and use them to augment the answer that is generated. That's RAG. It's a type of grounding, which is a type of tool. Human in the loop. This is where, you go to the human and say, do you have any feedback on this answer? That would not help with this problem. Pure, do you know what the term means? A long one. A business analyst asks a generative AI model about the quarterly revenue of a small startup that recently entered the market. Okay, so we got a business analyst. This is a person who is on an investment company or something. And they're analyzing the quarterly revenue of a startup. Okay, the model confidently provides a specific revenue figure and even mentions a supposed press release detailing the company's success. However, After further investigation, the analyst discovers that the startup has not yet released any financial reports and no such press release exists. The information provided by the AI model is entirely fabricated despite sounding plausible. Which type of large language model limitation does this exemplify? Okay, they're not asking us how we fix it. They're not asking us anything but this is what kind of problem. Bias, no. Bias is when you accidentally train the model and it's really good at detecting writing samples from children, but it can't read adult writing because it never saw adult writing, right? That's a type of bias. Knowledge cutoff, no. Knowledge cutoff is if you go to Gemini and you say, who won the World Series? And they say it's the Rangers, that's because Gemini, when it was trained, was fed data that was its own time, right? Data dependency, I'm not sure what they mean. I guess this is our dependency on the data that the model knows, maybe. But again, that's not the answer. Hallucination, yeah. Hallucination. The other night I was watching this old movie, The Andromeda Strain. And The Andromeda Strain is based on, is it a Robin Cook? Or no, it's Crichton, right? It's a Crichton book. Anyway, so in the original book, the book is written like it's a governmental investigation of a disaster. That's the way the book is written. And in the back of the book, it actually mentions references to like documents that are used in this book. So when they went to rate the movie, they grab a copy of the book. And the guy who's writing the movie script, he goes trying to find all these well, they're all made up, because the entire thing is written like it's a true happening natural disaster or a true disaster, but it's all made up, So all the references are made up. And for a more modern example, I don't know if you've ever heard of the lawyer who went to ChatGPT and said, I'm in a court case and I need legal precedents. And ChatGPT just made up a bunch of legal precedents. None of them were real. And the guy goes to court with these made up legal precedents. The court noticed, shall we say. Anyway, hallucination. It's when the model sounds convinced that this is true, but it may not be true. A generative AI tool that answers employee policy questions is providing outdated and inaccurate information, causing confusion. This sounds familiar. The company wants the tool to give reliable answers based on the latest official documents. Well, okay. Once again, sounds like where they need something that allows them to look the answers up in a source of truth, right? And I just told you what I would look for. Fine-tune the underlying language model with a broader data set of general knowledge. No, fine-tuning is a type of training which will always be out of date. Increase the temperature setting of the language model. No, the temperature setting, remember that we also call the creativity setting. When the temperature setting is 0, you get very straightforward sentences and they're kind of the same every time because they're the most statistically likely English structure, right? When you start dialing the temperature up, maybe you get more flourishful, maybe you get more flourishes in the language. Maybe you get different ways of saying the same thing because more randomization in the way the words are selected. So it's the creativity setting. Implement grounding, that's it, right? Like I said, if they had said something about add a tool that can look up the data, if they say grounding, if they say RAG, those are all variations. Reduce the token count now. So that's how many words, that's not going to help us here. All right. A sales team wants to create dynamic and personalized video pitches for potential clients. They receive client information in various formats and need an AI model that can transform this information into engaging video content tailored to each client's specific needs and challenges. Which model should they use? Okay, well, we just said. The Imagen is images, not video. Gemini and Gemma are both language models. The Gemini is the big fancy cloud-based one, and Gemma is the one we could download out of the cloud. A growing retail company with fragmented phone, email, and basic website chat support needs a unified cloud solution. Okay, they require integrated communication channels, consistent customer experiences, and scalable support that ensures security and privacy. Which Google Cloud offering should they use? Okay, so we've got human beings in some call center somewhere that are on the phone. We're doing email support. We're doing chat support. with automated chat support and then some human chat support. And then throw in a couple of other channels of communication like SMS communication and some other things, okay? And of course, the word on the advertising brochure page is omni-channel, right? This is an omni-channel solution. It's a product from Google that helps you build this kind of stuff. Vertex AI platform. No, Vertex AI platform is all about AI. It's not necessarily about a call center, or kind of a communication center, kind of like this. Yeah. CC contact center as a service, which is the acronym, is what you want. Google Cloud Contact Center as a service is the big offering. And it's a group of individual products that are all about, these different types of feedback. We mentioned this. We also mentioned the sub products. Conversational AI is one of the sub products that would help you with chatbots. Vertex AI Search might be a sub product that might help you with searching and finding things. Agent Assist is a sub product. Okay. So again, make sure you know the big brand name. This is the big, like I'm building the contact center. But then I've got, other products that are kind of sub products that might help with individual pieces. Like Conversation AI would be all about building that automated chatbot. Agent Assist would be about, how do I build a chatbot for my employees? So while they're on the phone or while they're text messaging or while they're chatting somebody, you got this agent assistant that's over here saying, based on what the user just said, I think this might be something you should say to them. So it's designed to help your get questions answered. So there's a number of products in there. Product name. Let's do one more, and we'll have a couple of final things, and we'll wrap up. An org is seeking to improve how its employees access and use internal company information scattered across various systems. Gemini Enterprise starts to go into my brain, but maybe that's not what they're doing. They want to provide their knowledge workers with tools that can understand and use this data to enhance productivity and design and decision making. Okay. What is the key benefit of using Gemini? Oh, okay. So it is Gemini Enterprise. What's a key benefit? Okay, so wait. They want to improve how employees access and use internal information. Okay, so one of the things we said is like regular old Gemini, but it's connected to all these internal systems, right? They want to provide their knowledge workers with tools. Well, it's a chatbot kind of tools that can understand and use this data and enhance productivity and decision making. Yeah, Notebook LM is part of it. It's Gemini, but it's all connected. Okay, what's the key benefit? All right. Gemini Enterprise primarily focuses on enhancing external customer engagement through AI-powered chatbots. No, that's conversational agents, and that's nothing to do with this question. Gemini Enterprise directly manages the underlying infrastructure and hardware required for AI model training. Okay, no, Gemini Enterprise is nothing about model training, and it's nothing about hardware. No. Gemini Enterprise allows employees to find and use internal information more easily by creating can access and understand data from various enterprise sources. Yes, you can do custom agents a couple of different ways in Gemini Enterprise. That is one of its features. So yes. Also, all the other stuff they say about, helps them find the internal information easily, the whole thing's like an agent. You could say Gemini is always an agent, right? So the difference between this version of the Gemini agent and the Gemini Enterprise version of the agent is it's pre-connected to all of our corporate information. So I'm pretty sure that's the answer. But let's always check. Gemini Enterprise is mainly designed for building and deploying custom machine learning models. No. It's nothing about building and deploying custom machine learning. That's kind of the same kind of problem as answer B, right? That's not what it's about. Okay. All right, guys, we're in to an end here. Again, make sure you have bookmarks. Either my Google Doc version of my notes or the Word doc version of the notes, okay? If you haven't already joined us on our LinkedIn group, you might want to do that. Remember, the live stream of my class is live until next Friday, the Friday after Thanksgiving. So if you want to go back and rewatch the video, you can, but also remember you have a little scrubber there so you can fast forward or rewind over different sections if you want to, you can find a particular place. I got a link in here to my lecture notes. Those are the ones I did during the 2 days event. And I have a link to the office hours, which this is actually the office hours I did last night, but it's the same as today. That's a link to the office hours. It's got all the same slides I've been doing. Remember, if you don't get your voucher, if you have any problems with your voucher or anything like that, contact Launchpad for Veterans with the underscores in there at ROI Training. They'll be happy to help you out. You're welcome to contact me, but if you ask me about your voucher, I'm just going to forward your email to Launchpad for Veterans, right? But still, you want to find me online, you want to find me in LinkedIn, that QR code's my LinkedIn. You want to ping an email to me at Patrick at ROI Training, ask me a question, please feel free. You have all those links in here to the various resources that I've mentioned, the exam guide and the study guide that we talked about today. You know, those are both really good resources where they're filled with product names and technical terms. Understand what they all are. Also, if you plan on taking it on the exam online, make sure that you validate that your machine will work. And I'll tell you right now, if you work for somebody like a bank or something, or an agency where they have really locked down laptops, you won't be able to use your laptop, right? Because you have to install like this special secure browser, which means you have to be like an administrator on your laptop. So if you're going to take it virtually, you might need your own personal laptop to do that. So just keep that in mind, right? I also have a link to what's required when you're doing it in person. That's where they talk about like the 2 forms of ID that I talked about, etc. All right. Criterion support page. If you have any kind of problems, you need to reschedule your exam. I think as long as it's more than 24 hours out, you can reschedule any exam. Yeah. Just don't try to reschedule the day of because you're too late. But within a day or two, you can reschedule. So if you need to, you can. Also, like the day I couldn't get the validation system to recognize me, you know, that's where I went to say, I'm having problems getting in. Can you help me? And they also, since they never could get me in either, they helped me reschedule the exam. I didn't lose any money. You know, I just took it from the testing center a week later or something like that. Also, I added this since our event, which is the kind of general steps I went through on registering for the exam. So if you are about to go register for your exam, remember, if you take it and pass it by December 19th, you get some extra swag. Is it Google Socks? Is that what they're giving out? I forget. But anyway, if you want to take it later on, if you don't want to take it in the next month, that's fine. But again, remember, I think the less you're going to remember from our event. So just keep that in mind. All right, y'all, that's about all I have for you. I hope you found our office hours helpful, as I hope you found the event helpful. Again, find me on LinkedIn, shoot me an email if you have questions. Best of luck to you on the certification. If you take the certification and you want to brag, you know, brag online at in LinkedIn, ping me. I'm happy to come over and tell you congratulations. Thanks, everybody. Hope you guys have a good weekend.